Okay. Dum, 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 dum. Okay. Good. Very good.
Hey, hello, everybody. Again, I see nobody, so that's okay. Hopefully today we'll conclude chapter 4 in the Tanya. In chapter 4, he is discussing the garments of the soul. In chapter 3, he discusses the 10 powers or faculties of the soul, 3 intellectual powers, Chochmah, Bin, and Das, and the 7 emotional powers, which are basically Chesed and Gvura, love and rejection. Those that are powers. And in this chapter, he's speaking about the levushim, the garments. In other words, the different forms of expression of the garments of the soul. These are called garments because they don't become really one with the soul. This is how the soul expresses itself. Anything any ideas that arise in the Chochmah, Bin, and Das, or the emotions, are expressed in thought, speech, or action. Then he goes on to say, even though normally the garment, which is something exterior to the person himself, to the soul of the person, is so far removed from the person, it is no comparison between the garment of the soul and the soul itself, or the faculties of the soul, the thought, the emotional and intellectual components of the soul. But yet he says over here, the garments of the soul can be far closer to godliness, can be a lot holier, and can elevate the soul to a place that is a lot higher than the soul itself can elevate itself. Why is that? Because through the doing of the Torah and mitzvahs, through the thinking or speaking about Torah and mitzvahs, and through the action of the Torah and mitzvahs, one is actually connecting with the godliness of the Torah and the mitzvahs. By God, as he says, the Torah and mitzvahs are his knowledge and his will. And by God saying his knowledge and his will is not a separate component from God himself, it is one. It is all one essential component. So therefore, when one uses the garments of the soul, the thought or speech or action, and connects through them by observing and saying the words of Torah and doing the mitzvahs, which are all physical, most of them are physical action with physical objects, this is elevating the soul and enabling the soul to be connected to godliness in a way that the soul itself cannot. Because the soul itself is a creation, it itself is an entity, is a created entity, and therefore by being a created entity, it is basically separate from godliness. However, through the garments, the thought, speech, and action, that the soul is part of now, when the soul uses the garments, the soul is actually motivating, and so to speak, becomes one with the garments. And that's what he discussed at the beginning of the chapter, how the emotions and the intellect are what leads a person to fulfill the commandments and to abstain from going against any of the commandments. So the soul itself, through being involved and being immersed in its garments, has a chance to become connected to godliness through the Torah and mitzvahs itself, through observing the Torah and mitzvahs through the garments, the thought, speech, and action. Now, even though we say that one cannot grasp godliness, even the highest spiritual worlds cannot truly grasp godliness, certainly not the lowly physical body through the physical actions of the garments. Yet he says that this is something that God did. He, so to speak, contracted and lowered his essence, and he placed them in his Torah and mitzvahs, his will and his knowledge. He literally placed in the Torah mitzvahs, which are embraced through the physical levushim, the physical garments of the body in which is immersed the soul. And so this is how, through doing Torah and mitzvahs, one is actually coming closer to godliness more than the soul is able to do so on its own. And that is why it says that 1 hour of doing Torah and mitzvahs in this physical world is greater than a whole life of existence in the world to come, even though over there we are in a spiritual state removed from the hindrance of the physical body. So how could it be what we're accomplishing here on this world is higher and connects us greater to godliness in a sense than what we're going to have when we actually can share in a feeling somewhat of godliness in the world to come? Because what we have in the world to come is only a ziv and a ha'ora. It is like a ray. It's only a ray of godliness. It's a reflection, so to speak, of godliness. It is not the essence of godliness, which man cannot have. When can man partake of the essence of godliness? Only when it comes down through Torah and mitzvahs, because God is the one who contracted his essence into the Torah and mitzvahs, that a human being, through fulfilling the Torah and mitzvahs and learning Torah and doing the mitzvahs, can actually interact and be connected to godliness. Okay, that is all things that we discussed in the past. We're going to start now by the line that begins Va'af she'aTorah nislabsha b'dvarim tachtonim gashmiyim. Right before this, he said that since the Torah and mitzvahs which are one with godliness, are invested and contracted in the Torah, and through that, by observing the Torah and mitzvahs through our levushim, through the physical garments of thought, speech, and action, we can become one with godliness. So now he starts with an obvious question, and he's going to ask, how can we say that we're connecting with godliness? The fact is, we're connecting with very, very lowly physical objects. Because if I'm saying words of Torah, as he said before, I'm saying letters of the Torah, I'm doing a mitzvah with a physical object, whether it's tefillin or tzitzis or tzedakah or mezuzah or anything else, and whatever I'm doing with my physical body is a lowly physical being, which is so far removed from godliness that it's ridiculous to say that I'm connecting with godliness. So what is the big deal of saying that through the garments a person is connecting with godliness? It is godliness that is, so to speak, hidden or placed in such a lowly object that it became something physical. So he's going to explain over here that even though it is godliness that we don't see, it is godliness that has been somehow contracted and transposed into a physical object, let's say putting on tefillin. So even though you're saying that I am interacting with godliness, the fact is I'm interacting with the physical thing. So the Alter Rebbe is going to give a very simple parable that shows that the physical concealment does not detract in any way from the fact that concealed within this physical shell is godliness. And he's going to give an example. If somebody is going to be invited to the king, somebody, we have to realize we're speaking about times when kings were really something. Don't equate it with the kings that we have now, let's say in England or whatever, a time when the king was really an absolute ruler over his country. So if somebody's close with the king, and somebody has became a friend with the king, and somebody is hugging the king, and he's going to go home, and he's going to say, the king is so wonderful. I actually gave him a hug. Nobody's going to say to this person, big deal. You didn't hug the king. You hugged the coat. You hugged the suit. You hugged the shirt. Especially if it was in the winter, it was outside. You hugged maybe 3 or 4 garments. Within all of these garments, there was the king. It's not called hugging the king. You hugged the garment. Nobody's going to say that, because even though, in fact, he hugged the garment, it does not conceal and it doesn't change in any way the fact that who he is really hugging is the king, because he's not interested in the garments. The garments are just a way for the king to reveal himself. But what he's hugging over here is really the essence of the king himself. The same thing, if the king gives somebody a hug, nobody's going to say the king didn't hug you. It was his coat that hugged you, or the sleeves of his jacket or anything, because it is an expression of the king's love to you that is being affected over here by the king hugging him. This is the same thing he's going to explain over here. Even though when we are doing the mitzvah, we're connecting to godliness and the essence of godliness, but through such a lowly medium of the garments, of the mitzvahs, the physicality of the mitzvah, but yet the essence of godliness is there, and the fact that it comes through such a physical matter does not change that the essence is we are enveloping godliness, and at the same time we are immersed and being enveloped by godliness. That's what he says here. Let's start again. Va'af. And even though the fact is that the Torah is clothed in very lowly physical objects, like Moses, whether saying words of Torah, looking at texts of Torah, doing the physical mitzvahs. Don't demean this in any way and say it's not a value, because harezeh, this can be compared to kemechabek es hamelech, somebody hugging a king derech mashal, for instance, she'ein hefresh b'malas his karvusay udveikusay b'melech. There's no difference, there's no distinction on the level of his being close and connected to the king. Bein mechabkei, whether he hugs him kishu lovish levush echad, when the king is clothed with one garment, bein shu lovish kam levushim, or when the king is wearing many garments. Me'achar, since sheguf hamelech b'toicham, the body of the king is within these garments. So who he is really hugging over here is the king. And the closeness to the king is not affected that there's different garments that the king is wearing at that time. V'chein, so also, there's no difference im hamelech mechabkei bizroyoi, if the king is embracing him, is hugging him with his arm, he's taking him around. Gam keshehimlu beshes teich malbushav, even when the king's arm is clothed within many robes, within his garments. Nobody's going to say the king didn't hug you, it was his sleeve. So that is what happens when a person learns Torah or does mitzvahs. He is embracing godliness, even though it's housed, the godliness is literally housed in the physicality of the mitzvah or the Torah. And when he is immersed in this, God is embracing him, even through the fact that he's immersed in Torah and mitzvahs, even though he's immersed in, so to speak, the garments of the Torah and mitzvahs, because it is the essence of godliness there. What he's going to do now is bring a number of verses that from the Torah that bring out this idea that God is literally hugging me, is embracing me through the Torah. And he says, Kamesha Kosov, as it is written in the verse in the Torah, the Yeminoi Techapkeni, God's right hand embraces me. What does it mean, his right hand? I mean, God's right hand doesn't embrace us. So evidently he's referring to something. So what is he referring to when he says Yeminoi, God's right hand? 1 second. So he says, Shehi HaTorah. The yamin, the right hand of God, refers to the Torah, shenitna miyamin, was given by God's right hand. There's a pasuk that says miyaminoi eish das lamai. Doesn't say that here. I'm just quoting some other verse in the Torah. I don't know why he doesn't say it here. So it says the Torah was an eish das, a fiery Torah that came miyaminoi from his right hand. Why is Torah compared to right? In Kabbalah and in everything, giving with the right hand alludes to kindness. When you give somebody in a proper manner, in a loving manner, it's called you give with the right hand. And if somebody gives with the left hand, it shows a diminished connection between the two people. The right symbolizes kindness and closeness, attraction, and love. And so when it says that the Torah is from the right hand, because the fact that Hashem gave us his Torah is the greatest expression of his love for us. So when the pasuk says his right hand embraces us, it means the right hand which gave the Torah, it means the Torah is embracing us. Shehi, it. The Torah is Bechina Chesed Umayim. Why is it called right? Because it is the level of Chesed, is the attribute of Chesed, kindness, Umayim, and water. The idea of water is, as he mentioned before, water descends from above to below. Water is not stationary. Water reflects the idea of coming from a donor to a recipient, of coming from a higher level, from the source, to the recipient, to the lower level, to down below. And so the Torah is what comes down from Hashem in the greatest act of kindness. And so therefore, when the person is completely involved with Torah and mitzvahs, so you have this double action, he is embracing, he's internalizing the Torah and mitzvahs with his emotion, and he's being embraced by it. And by doing this, he is elevating the soul to a connection with godliness that he's not able to have before. So with this, he concluded the idea of what are the levushim, the garments. I'd just like to add something over here, an interesting thing that I heard just before. I was learning with somebody and learning about the idea, as expressed over here, that the Torah comes down to us in a very, very physical fashion, the Torah and mitzvahs, in physical objects. But that is because in its essence, Torah on the godly level is one with godliness itself. The Torah itself is God's wisdom and it's God's will, which is one with God. The Torah and mitzvahs that we have is the essence of godliness coming down to us in some type of tangible and physical way that we should be able to interact with it. A lot more than our soul can interact with it on its own. Now, there's an interesting medrash in the Talmud that tells us when Moses went to receive the Torah, he ascended Mount Sinai. He was there for 40 days. And when he went up, he came to God to speak with God. How? Don't ask me. That's one of the things that we believe in that we can't understand. And he spoke with God that he's there to receive the Torah. The angels on high saw that Moshe was there, and they said, what is a mortal being doing over here? And Hashem said, he came to receive the Torah. So the angels were very upset. And the angel said, don't give the Torah to them. The Torah should remain over here in heaven. The Torah belongs to the angels that make sure to fulfill it. And they make sure not to go anything against the laws of the Torah. Why would you give the Torah to people? They're going to sin. They're going to break the laws. They're going to against what you tell them. The Torah belongs over here with the angels. So God said to Moses, Moses, do you have a response to say to them? They're giving a good argument. They feel the Torah should be by them. Moshe Rabbeinu said, I'm afraid to answer them. They are fiery spiritual beings, and their holiness, their holy, fiery spirituality can literally consume me and destroy me. God said, hold on to my chair and you'll be okay. Answer them. So it says that Moses answered the angels, you say that the Torah belongs to you. What does it say in the Torah? Honor your father and your mother. Do you angels have a father and a mother? You don't. Evidently, the Torah doesn't belong to you. What does it say in the Torah? You should always remember the days that you were in Egypt and God took you out of Egypt. Were you in Egypt? Were you enslaved in Egypt? Were you liberated from Egypt? No. Well, it doesn't belong to you. It's not something which is intended for you. The same thing with other things, with other commandments. Do you have a yesahara? Do you have an inclination to go against God? Angels don't have an inclination. How could it apply to you? So the angels agreed, and they said, okay, God, you can give it to Moses, and Moses brought the Torah down. Okay, that is what the Medrash says. How do we take this Medrash literally? I don't know. I don't know if every Medrash is intended to be taken absolutely literally. It's teaching us something. But naturally, the Torah was intended to be given to human beings. So why is there this whole fight that when Moshe came up, the angels challenged him to the degree that he was literally afraid for his life and said, no, this is going to stay here. So it was today that I heard from somebody that I learn with a very nice parable. This is somebody who is very, very knowledgeable. I learn with him every day. And he knows many, many different things. And he told me on this thing, a mashal. He told me a parable, which I found very interesting in his story. And he said the following, that there was a rabbi who was a rabbi in the community for many, many years. He became quite old, and he found it difficult to contend with the many, many problems and the many shailas, halachic questions that were brought to him from the members of his very large city. There were many, many issues that he constantly had to deal with, family issues, halachic issues, and it was consuming really a lot of time, and he didn't have the strength to deal with everything. So he called in the members of the city. He called in the mayor of the city, of course, a Jewish town, a Jewish city, and all of the other people, the committee. And he said, I don't have the strength. And I would like to go to a smaller town where there aren't so many questions that are brought to me, and I will be able to answer the questions and rest in between. I'll be able to handle it. I'm simply not able to do it any longer the way I've been doing it till now. They all agreed. They realized that the rabbi is becoming quite old, a little bit infirm, and they gave him their full consent. Yes, you served us loyally for so many years. You can understand this. We'll be happy, and we'll give you a pension also, because the salary you're going to receive over there won't be a big salary. They were very happy and everything. Okay, the time came. The members of the smaller community sent a number of people with wagons to load up all of the rabbi's goods to take him to the new small community where now he's going to serve as rabbi. Before they're ready to leave, along comes the mayor, along comes the elders of the town, and they began screaming, and they say to the people from the other town that are loading up the rabbi's goods on their wagons, no, you cannot take him. He's our rabbi. What right do you have to take him? You can't do this. So they're all perplexed. They don't understand. And they start screaming, it's our rabbi, you can't take him. If you want, let's go to our rabbi, to a different rabbi, and we'll lay out the case. So the members of this other community go to the new rabbi in town, and they have a whole case against the members of the largest city that are putting up such a fight against their taking away the rabbi. And the members of the smaller town say, we don't understand. We heard that all of you agreed Your mayor agreed, all of the committee agreed that the rabbi can move to us. What's this whole fight about? We don't understand it. And so the mayor said, look, if we would have just let you take him without putting up the fight, what would have you thought? We didn't care for him, and therefore we're letting him go. By us putting up a fight, we're showing you how precious he was to us, how dear and beloved he is to us. Not that we're giving something away because we didn't care for him, we didn't love him, but because we recognize for him it is better. The same way this Marty explained to me is what the Torah is showing us over here, that the angels were putting up this fight for the Torah because they know that the Torah belongs up here, but they wanted Moshe Rabbeinu and the Jewish people to realize that for them losing the Torah was a major, major loss. Now, I never saw this anyplace else. It's an idea. Do I say that this is the idea? There's many other things that are expressed in this whole discussion of Moses and the angels arguing over who should really receive the Torah, who it's intended for. There's many deep ideas behind it, but this thing is a very interesting story. I just heard it today, as I said, from Marty, and I appreciated it, and I figured I would share it with you. So this is the conclusion of this chapter. These are the three garments of the soul. Everything that we do, all the Torah and mitzvahs that we do, that we express, is done through the garments. Now, even though the emotional aspect is very, very important, because especially by Hasidim, one of the main features of Hasidim is that everything that they do is not dry and done remotely. I have to do it, but it's done with a passion, it's done with a happiness. There's a love and excitement in every mitzvah that they do because they realize that this is not just doing a mitzvah. It's not just a commandment, but this is literally connecting them with godliness. I remember my father always shown every time when we would leave the sukkah, he would literally kiss the walls of the sukkah because this is a mitzvah and it represented something that he was so passionate about. So yes, the passion and the emotion is very, very important. But yet, just the passion, the emotion, without physically doing the physical embrace of the object of the godliness inherent in the Torah and mitzvahs is still missing the actual embrace of godliness. Okay, any questions? Now, Ellie is not here. I have no idea if anybody's really listening or if anybody's here.
There's
Shalom,
7
Rabbi.
people.
Oh, okay, good. Somebody was actually here.
We're here. Thanks,
We're
Taki.
here, Rabbi.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions? Anything that needs more explanation?
No, that was a beautiful mashal.
Thank you. I'll tell Marty it was appreciated. I liked it.
I have a
Okay.
question, Rabbi.
Sure.
Thank you. About this, the mitzvahs being a garment for the connection, what is the difference in those mitzvahs of doing and those of abstaining, or are just different garments?
They are different types of garments. Both of them are connections to God. He's going to speak about it a little bit later. He gives, as a matter of fact, he's going to give an example. There are different things, taste that a person enjoys. One is mesikus. Somebody likes something, a pleasure, a sweet taste. There's another pleasure that a person can enjoy by taking something very sour or bitter, and yet with different spices, bringing out a sweetness from the bitter and sour taste. The same thing he's going to say later on in Tanya. In a negative a commandment, taking something negative and fulfilling it by not doing it is taking the negative and sweetening it and making it pleasurable to God. So he does answer your question later on. Good question.
Thank you very much. Very interesting.
Sure. Okay, everybody. Thank you for attending. Hopefully next week we shall continue. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Take care.
Thank you.